I was 19 the first time I traveled to the Arab world, and I still remember the very first time I heard the call to prayer. Despite the fact that I had been having a lovely time with newfound Moroccan friends over a delicious couscous meal, I felt afraid for a moment. That moment of fear was followed by profound confusion and then shame. Where had this fear come from? I truly believe that it was a product of the simplistic depiction of the Arab world so common in my educational experience and in the U.S. curriculum in general. My name is Laura, and I'm interested in creating an alternative curriculum so that U.S. students might develop a deeper and more nuanced understanding of the Arab world. As a master's student at the University of Pennsylvania, I've been conducting research on how the Arab world is being taught in public high schools. A portion of this research also includes a textbook analysis of 5 of the most commonly used world history textbooks. Now, there really are a number of common misunderstandings and stereotypes that are still being propagated today, but I would like to talk about the 4 most common. They are the conflation of terms, especially of the terms Arab and Muslim, the presentation of violence in the region without sufficient context, the false dichotomy and struggle between tradition and modernity in the region, and finally, the depiction of Arab women as victims. Now, when we talk about the conflation of the terms Arab and Muslim, that really means Arab and Muslim are used interchangeably in not only the textbooks, but in classes as well. So consider the chapter titles, Europeans Claim Muslim Lands and The Muslim World Expands. When analyzing the content in the chapter, Europeans Claim Muslim Lands, we see that the textbooks really mean Europeans claim Ottoman lands. Now, when Ottoman forces are described as Muslim, but European forces are not described as Christian, then militarism and Islam are implicitly linked in the learner's mind. Secondly, it's common to see violence presented in descriptions and photos without additional context. Consider this dramatic photo. There's really no context given or additional explanation other than the caption, "Palestinians have launched terrorist attacks on Israel." Thirdly, there's the presentation of a false dichotomy and struggle between tradition and modernity in the region. Tradition is often framed as negative and modernity as positive, and the two are often presented as being mutually exclusive. We see this in this textbook quote, "Observing the slow decline of the Ottoman Empire, some Muslim leaders decided that their countries would either have to adjust to the modern world or be consumed by it." Now, teachers also often propagate this stereotype in their classes as presenting the Arab world as a place where tradition and modernity clash. And finally, it's often common to hear the depiction of women and Muslim and Arab women as victims. We see this in the text when women are described as used to having access to education and public life. The textbook then goes on to describe, however, that over time, women were forced to live increasingly isolated lives. When they did go out in public, they were expected to be veiled. Now, the text mentions this in the very broadly titled Muslim culture and doesn't provide any additional background information. For example, we don't know when this was happening, where this was happening, or why this is happening. Without this important information, students are left with a very distinct impression of gender roles in the Muslim world. All of this made me think, what can we do about these widespread misunderstandings and stereotypes in the U.S. curriculum? I've partnered with Al Bustan Seeds of Culture, a nonprofit organization located in West Philadelphia, to create an alternative curriculum unit. This 10-lesson curriculum unit is titled Kulthum, Her Life and Legacy, and aims to teach students about Arab culture and history through the life of Kulthum, the Egyptian superstar vocalist. The lessons plans are designed to be easy to use, relevant to students' lives, and combat the stereotypes I discussed previously. Each lesson plan clearly states how they align with the Common Core standards, which are now adopted in 45 states. And they're also flexible depending on subject matter and time constraints. Here's an example of one of the lessons. In Lesson Plan 7, students learned that Kulthum was a shrewd businesswoman, a negotiator not afraid of driving a hard bargain, yet also someone who wore traditional Egyptian dress and sang traditional Egyptian folk songs. It is hoped that students learn from this lesson that it is possible to embrace changing gender roles while also retaining cultural traditions. Thanks to the University of Pennsylvania, we have engaged with local educators in a professional development workshop around this curriculum unit. Our next challenge is to spread awareness of the curriculum unit so that more teachers across the United States might utilize it in their classes. It is my hope that alternative curriculum units, like Kulthum, Her Life and Legacy, may serve as a tool for teachers and students so that future generations might be able to critically think about the ideologies behind curriculum and to really question how history and culture are created and recorded. Thank you.